The Holy Gospel according to Luke chapter 12, beginning at verse 13.
Praise and glory to God.
Then someone from the crowd called out, "Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me." Jesus replied, "Friend, who made me a judge over you to decide what such things as that?" Then he said, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own." Then he told them a story. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, "What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops." Then he said, "I know. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, 'My friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now, take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for?' Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God." Then, turning to his disciples, Jesus said, "That is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, whether you have enough food to eat or enough clothes to wear. For life is more than food, and your body more than clothing. Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them. And you are far more valuable to him than any birds. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can't accomplish a little thing like that, what's the use of worrying over bigger things? Look at the lilies and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for flowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? And don't be concerned about what to eat and what to drink. Don't worry about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world, but your Father already knows your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything you need. So don't be afraid, little flock, for it gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to those in need. This will store up treasure for you in heaven. And the purses of heaven never get old or develop holes. Your treasure will be safe. No thief can steal it, and no moth can destroy it. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also." This is the gospel of Christ.
Praise to Christ the Word.
I don't know about you, but thinking about money and talking about money is one of my least favourite things to do, particularly when it comes to my own relationship with money. Last week, Rebecca talked about one of the major resources that we have in our lives, time. She talked about our own rhythms of life and encouraged us to pay attention to how we use our time and what that says about what is shaping us. And there's a line that she used that stuck with me. Who's driving your bus? In our gospel reading, we hear Jesus saying, "Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also." So whether our treasure is time or money, it speaks volumes about who we are and who we are following and what we are allowing to shape us. But I'm not looking for an easy out, because Jesus is talking about money. And he talks about money a surprising amount. If you've been looking ahead in our Kairos booklet, you will have seen that the activity for the week is a bit of a personal financial audit, reviewing your spending over the past week or month. And this is just for you. No one else gets to see this. I'm also fully aware that taking a deep dive into our money situation can make our anxiety levels skyrocket. So before I go any further, this is just a reminder that this exercise is not telling you what you should do. It is rather a chance to invite Jesus into the nitty-gritty of your life. No matter whether your finances are big, small, or anything in between, Jesus is in it. At home, Rebecca and I, as we've been doing this exercise, we've been talking a lot about our own relationship to money. In particular, as followers of Jesus, what does it look like as we get ourselves ready for retirement? Now, hopefully retirement for us is a little way off, but we do need to think about it. I mean, Rebecca's hopeful for it now, but but whenever it is, we still need to be thinking and looking ahead to it. And so how does this looming expense affect our trust in God's provision? How does it affect how we give joyfully and generously the resources that God has so joyfully and generously given to us? I'm personally confident that Jesus' intention is that we are good stewards of our resources. Most importantly, though, that money isn't the thing that rules our lives. That's Jesus' place only. Jesus is the person to rule over our lives, the King of all. At Synod last year, Bishop Justin gave a talk about mission and money, and I've heard lots of people talking about it since then. So in a bit, I'm going to play you a couple of extracts from that talk. As you listen, though, be aware that he is talking to church leaders, but the intention very strongly is that this is a message for everyone. And if you're on a leadership team here at St. Mike's, I encourage you to think about how this message lands for us as we lead St. Michael's. As individuals or couples, the encouragement is to think about your own attitudes towards what money you have, whether it's a little or a lot, and how easy or otherwise you find to use it for Jesus' adventures, knowing it's God's first and foremost. You'll hear Bishop Justin say, "I want the privilege of worshipping my God with my offering. It's much more fun when you have skin in the game." So whether your money goes towards Jesus' adventures here at St. Michael's, or missions dear to you, or your own kingdom dreams, do you see it as a privilege and a joy, and even fun to give back to God what is already his? How easy do you find it to trust that God gives the vision and then the resources? In our gospel reading, Jesus reminds us that life does not consist in what we possess, but in where we place our trust. And you'll hear that call to loosen our grip and lift our eyes in the video. So over to Bishop Justin.
I think one of those is our relationship to money in the church. For me, I find it, I lose sleep over this actually, where I'm part of a church, and this is, by the way, this is a wondering, where I worry that we are living off past generations' generosity and we're not paying our own way. That right across our church, centrally and often in some parish contexts, we're living on historical money. So if we're really honest, we're not paying our way. Past generations are paying for our worship, are paying for our pastoral care, are paying for our programs. I don't want to live like that. When I pass, I want to know I added value, and I'd far rather the money was spent on the hospital in Gaza. I'd far rather the money was spent somewhere else, but I don't want past generations' generosity to be spent on me. I want to pay my own way. I want to work out how we do that as a church. We are a long way off that. I'm not quite sure, I've never crunched the numbers, but I'm pretty sure there's no correlation between church wealth and church growth. I think through history there'd be, the fastest growing churches at this point in history outside the Western world do not have the wealth that we have. The issue in the church in New Zealand is never money, it's always hearts. So I want to encourage us. I come from a background, again, before being bishop, I remember I love when God miraculously turns up. I remember we were living in Cuba Street, hanging out with the street community, whatever, and we dreamed of this amazing place next door, which wasn't amazing at all, but compared to where we were living, it was amazing. And we dreamed of getting it, and in the end, we got this place to rent, and it was, the rent was exorbitant. And I remember somebody I hadn't seen in 10 years randomly appeared. Used to be my youth worker, Christian youth worker, and then he had gone overseas, and I think he'd done really well for himself, a very smart guy. And he randomly made contact out of the blue. We kind of had one coffee. He says, "How you going? What do you need?" "Oh, I can underwrite that for a while." Boom, done. Walked out my life, left me underwriting that. Gave me money weekly to get us started for a few years. I love that. I love that God resources his visions. I love living like that. Many will have been to Ngāti River Monastery, and again, I feel embarrassed about telling these stories but it is our stories. I remember the fact that we tried to buy Ngāti River Monastery, and nobody told me that you needed a job to get a mortgage. It was a small fine print. And I remember that we had we were trying to buy the monastery, and we had no trust funds. We had no entity. We just had God, and he called us. And I remember our Christian mortgage broker was very biblical. He modelled himself on Pontius Pilate. So he washed his hands of us. Because who knew this? Again, I don't know, but once a bank has turned you down for a mortgage, they have transparency. They tell the other banks. It's nice, eh? So all the banks knew that we'd been turned down. So there we are, believing that we wanted to give our life for this monastery, no real income. And we'd already shifted up there, which is another mistake. Don't shift into a place you don't own yet. That's always a problematic thing too. But hey, that's fine, you make those mistakes. And then I remember our mate had asked us to come through to Taranaki and do training for his youth workers. And I said to him, mate, he says, "Look, you said you'd come through and do some training for us." And I said, "You don't understand, we're depressed. We can't come through and do training for you. Our lives are falling apart. I've just shifted into a place I can't buy. My wife's crying herself to sleep at night. This ain't going to work." He said, No, you said you'd come and do training. So me and Jenny drove to Taranaki. We always had a white van in those days. And we did this training. And even the training was a complete mockery. My mate was just mocking me. He got a church hall, had a podium with a microphone, introduced me. There was 3 of them. It was a complete mockery. So, it was just a great mock. Anyway, so in the morning tea, we had a morning tea break with 3 people. He said, "So what's happening in your life?" And I said, "Well, we happen to have shifted into a monastery which we can't buy because nobody's going to give us a mortgage, and they've walked away, etc. It's not a good time." He says, "Well, here's the card of the mobile lending manager from TSB." This is what he said. He says, "And she gave us a mortgage, and we're dodgy as hell." So I rang her this is Saturday morning tea. I rang her. I said, "Hey, cold call. Are you interested?" She says, "I'll meet you at lunchtime." And because we had no fixed abode, all our paperwork was in the van, the mobile office. So I met her at lunchtime, and I just gave her this paperwork, and she went, "Ooh," this sort of stuff like that. She says, I'll call you on Monday. So on Monday she rang, and she says, "Look, if I give you this mortgage, you've got to promise me 2 things. You've got to promise me you'll never, ever ask for another cent again in your life, and that you promise that you'll pay it back." We kept one of them. And so we got the mortgage. basically with no fixed job, no Christian trust. And after 10 years at Ngāti the River Monastery, we left, there was no mortgage over the place. And we'd built, so much had been built. I mean, David Smart's over there who went and built the chapel and others, but everybody, the whole place is a miracle. If you go there now, you watch, it's a miracle. And there was no mortgage over the place in 10 years, all that was built. And then I inhabit our church. And I just feel like we missed out on the miracle. I just feel like we need to change the conversation around money. I don't want somebody to pay. I wanted the privilege of worshipping my God by making my offering. Does that make sense? It's so much more fun when I've got skin in the game. It's so much more real. So I want to encourage us. I just wonder whether we're missing out on what God's got for us. Imagine if all our resources that we had historically been given could be released for Gaza, could be released for Ngāti Toa, could be released for whatever. And we could live in God's provision in the now. I would love that. I would love to live in that world. So what I wonder is this, is whether we can pivot to where vision precedes resource. We say, what's God asking us to do, not what resource have we got? Because what I find is when God gives a vision, he gives the resource. I've found that time and time again. And before we try to go to our respective trusts, why don't we go to ourselves as our starting point? Why would I want the church to have the privilege of paying for investment in God's mission? I wouldn't want anybody. I'd want to have that privilege because I believe in the vision. And so I'll stand by it. And then just maybe we'll find ourselves realizing that at the end of it all, we added value. That the kingdom came, we left a legacy of people and place. And we'll be known as that generation who others get to live off the shoulders of. Now again, this message is being recorded because it's not for us, it's for all of us. That make sense? I'm not sort of saying, only you in this room, why don't you pull out your credit card? No! It's for all of us. Everybody gets to play. Everybody gets to experience the generosity of God. Everybody gets to find a vision that's worth laying their life down for, because that's what it means to follow Jesus. We all get that option. And everybody in our community gets that option. And again, my favourite saying in life is every great work of God begins with first it's impossible, then it's difficult, and then it's done. I want everybody to experience that in our church. I just wonder whether we can pivot to some more interesting conversations around money